Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. Today is May 25th, 2021. Today's topic is obesity racist? And a lot of people are thinking this is an absurd title, and it is an absurd title, but it's absurd, but it's a title and a concept that is accepted by some people in this country. And I want to talk about it because the obesity epidemic threatens our population, threatens our species. We hear a lot of people in the media talking about existential threats. The obesity epidemic is legitimately one. It has the ability to ruin us as a country, ruin any nation that's burdened by it. The health issues, the loss of productivity, the disease rates, it's destructive. It possibly is the biggest problem that we face as a population today, completely ignored by the mainstream, or if not ignored completely, they look at it through a different lens entirely. And there is some talk about obesity being inextricably linked to racism. In fact, we're going to be picking on a Harvard doctor, last name is Stanford, during today's show, because she actually published a paper that says that it's inextricably linked to racism and systemic racism in America. And we're going to address not only obesity, but we're going to address racism too. I have some very, very strong opinions about racism. And because this kind of a conversation can really go left quickly with someone like me, Elisa said you have to have Alex Leaf on the show because he'll keep you grounded and keep you from stepping into dangerous territory. So Alex is going to be joining me in just a moment. Before we do that, I have to thank our title sponsor, a company that's actually combating obesity by making snacks that are actually very, very low in sugar, less than 1 gram of sugar in a tasty pastry. The new cake style tasty pastry is amazing. It comes in so many flavors: red velvet cake, blueberry, strawberry. I have 2 strawberry ones today. Cookies and cream, hot fudge sundae, birthday cake. I mean, the list goes on, and they're releasing new flavors constantly. This is a fantastic snack with 20 grams of high quality protein, less than 1 gram of sugar. You'll feel like you're cheating, but you're not, if you could imagine that in Elisa Profumo's voice. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary. Use the code SHR10 to save 10% off, or listen for the secret word during the commercial breaks today. Email the secret word to onair@superhumanradio.net. Include your mailing address. We'll send you a box of tasty pastries. It's that simple, and you'll love them. So don't forget. And now, without further delay, let me bring my guest front and center. Turn on his mic. How you doing, Alex?
Hey, I'm doing good, Carl.
Thanks for being here today. Oh, and for those of you asking where the Blueprint Power Hour is, little something jumped up in Rob's life, and so at the last minute we had to cancel. And Alex was kind enough to jump in last minute to help me talk about this discussion today. So I'm going to ask you this question just for a very simple yes or no answer, and then we're going to start breaking this topic down. Do you believe that that systemic racism is the reason that people of color are obese today?
No.
Okay. And so Alex made a great point off the air. If you're listening to this podcast right now and you actually believe that obesity is linked directly to systemic racism, we want to do this show again with someone on the other side making their points too, because we're both malleable and we're both willing to learn. So if you're listening to this show right now and going, these two guys don't know anything about what they're talking about, email me at onair@superhumanradio.net. We will do another episode of this, and we will include you and your points of view. So there you go. I'm not looking to promote an agenda. I'm looking to get to the truth. So before we move forward, I think we have to address racism in general first. So I'm going to ask the audience a question, and I'm going to allow people to answer well into later into the show, because some people may not be able to answer right away. Is it racist to do something nice for someone based upon the color of their skin? How would you answer that question? Do you think that if I do something, I give you a job, I let you go first, I pass over someone else and give you an opportunity because of the color of your skin, is that racist? I'm asking you, Alex.
Oh, sorry.
and the audience. I want them to comment, but I'm asking you as well.
Yeah, so I think that when you look at the dictionary definition of racism, it is prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against a person on the basis of their membership to a particular racial or ethnic group. Alternatively, it's the belief that different races possess distinct and intrinsic characteristics, abilities, or qualities that make one inferior or superior to another. And so on that basis, I think that, if you do anything on the basis of skin color alone, it could be considered racism, whether it's good or bad. And it can occur to any type of person, be it a person of color or someone who is white. And even, you might enter into more of a gray area when it comes to decisions that impact only a single individual. But when it's decisions that impact multiple groups of individuals in different races, if you incorporate race into your decision-making process, it automatically makes one racial group have an advantage over another. And therefore it is racist because you're suggesting that their race must be superior, which is why you're giving them this advantage, even if you're trying to benefit them, because when there's more than one race involved, if you benefit one, you're going to disadvantage another. And we see this with things like college admission, for example. They're trying to, rather than treat everyone equally, which is giving the same help to everyone, they're trying to enforce equal outcome, which is where you treat people unfairly in order to ensure outcomes are equal. And that's called equity. And so that's a great example of where racism is used for the perception of good. For example, you are going to reduce your admission of Asian Americans and white individuals to favor the admission of people of color on the basis of nothing other than skin color, because you want to help that marginalized group enter into college institutions.
So I want to be clear about something. I believe that racism is a horrible thing. I think that prejudice, prejudging someone based on the color of their skin or the phonetics of their last name or their chosen religion, I think any of those biases have no place in a sensitive, progressive society. And at the same time, I say to you that there is systemic racism in America, but it's not the systemic racism that the media and the political pundits would have you believe, because America is not a systemically racist nation holding Black people back. And a lot of people are going to go, Carl, you don't know what you're talking about. I do know what I'm talking about. I was born in Bed-Stuy, 14 years in the ghetto. I know what it's like to live in a really, really, really crappy environment. I know. But you can't tell me that it's just black people that voted for Barack Obama. He would have never been president 2 terms if a whole lot of white people didn't vote for him. And you can't tell me LeBron James gets the money he gets just because of the black people that fill the seats, because it's a lot more white people that fill those seats at those stadiums. And black rappers who make millions and billions of dollars, the majority of their patrons are white kids in the suburbs. So this country is not systemically racist where we want to hold black people back, but there is systemic racism. And if you want to get rid of racism, you have to get rid of all racism. You can't say, well, this racism is okay because it helps black people get into college above and beyond other people who maybe also deserve that slot but have the wrong skin color. You can't have it both ways. You can't have, we're going to use racism here, but we don't want it here. You either have to abolish racism as a whole or embrace it as a whole and STFU and move forward. Now, we've addressed racism for a second. When it comes to obesity, I think that no matter whether you're the keto camp, the hormonally driven body weight camp, the high protein camp, we can all agree on one thing. Calories do matter. If you eat excessive calories and that energy is not used to energize your muscles and move, you will become obese. And that's a colorblind process. Would you agree with that statement, Alex? I mean, you have a degree in nutrition. Am I reaching by saying that?
I think that fundamentally all contributors to obesity intersect at energy balance. So, calories is one component of that. Hormones are another. Physical activity is another. But ultimately, all of the environmental cues, such as food availability, how much you eat, your access to a gym, et cetera, all of those intersect at affecting energy balance. And it's that energy imbalance on the surplus side that ultimately leads to obesity. So yeah, calories matter.
Okay. So can we agree then that the consumption of calories, well, I'll ask you, do you think the consumption of overall calories and the energy imbalance that occurs in a larger number of Black Americans than white Americans is strictly based on the color of their skin?
No, I think fundamentally our nation is going in a very dangerous direction in terms of trying to distill many correlates with race down to existing because of racism. There's no doubt that there are indeed things about certain races that, for example, would impact obesity. For example, like more people of color live in areas where there's less fruits and vegetables for sale. It's more junk food is readily available. There might not even be a supermarket within miles of where they live. That's true for sure. But to suggest that things like that exist because of some systemic racism, I think is false. I think that it's wildly inappropriate, completely unsupported from an evidence standpoint, and dangerous to try and blame racism for everything that is going on currently, rather than looking at other factors such as, triple the rates of single mother households, or a tendency to enter into gangs to obtain that sense of belonging and familyship, or a general distrust, a greater distrust of healthcare practices. It's not so much a lack of access to healthcare, it's that people of color have a higher distrust of healthcare, so they choose not to engage in it as much. Those things aren't related to racism, they're related to choice and internal decisions that these individuals make, and they correlate with race, but they aren't the result of racism.
I agree. And there's a greater degree of cultural influence taking place here. Culture implies learned behaviors. We know that in the predominantly Black communities, they're less trusting of modern medicine. They just are. They tend not to go to doctors as frequently. That could be a combination of access. They don't have good doctors, cost, They don't feel that the cost of medical attention is worth their dollars because they are having difficulty paying bills and stuff. But the bottom line is that the Black community tends to be less trusting of medicine. In fact, Dr. Stanford writes in her paper for BIPOC, people of colors, who want help losing weight, they have a harder time accessing healthcare. There is a real and perceived systemic racism within medicine when they do access healthcare. She's saying that there is perceived racism at the doctor's office, that these people are treated differently by doctors. And she even cites in her paper that a Black person is less likely to be told by their doctor that they need to go on a diet than a white person. Now, what's going on in medicine? Why would medicine treat Black people differently?
Honestly, I don't know. And so I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to these individuals. I'm sure there are surveys out there, peer-reviewed, published surveys of both patients and healthcare providers that do suggest that there is a difference in these outcomes when it comes to people of color. I don't doubt that, but my issue is, how are you going to prove that that's due to racism as opposed to other factors?
Right.
And that's to what I was saying earlier about why it's a dangerous road to go down. How are you going to fix racism? Because racism fundamentally is a belief system that one skin color is superior to another or inferior, right? And so if racism exists, do you plan on just changing these, deeply ingrained beliefs of everyone? I think that would be an incredibly difficult thing to do, and it would be hard to battle. But if we skip this whole racism to blame type of thing, and we instead focus on more tangible causes of why these disparities occur, then we have a fighting chance. Maybe it comes down to education for both the patient and the healthcare provider. Maybe it comes down to cultural differences. Maybe it comes down to finding healthcare providers that can relate more to their patient. Maybe it's just simply a miscommunication between them because they come from such different backgrounds. It's not that either one thinks one race is superior or inferior to another. It's that there's just difficulty communicating and understanding the experiences that one another goes through. In which case, why blame racism? Why not just blame the fact that, maybe we need to have more people with a better understanding of marginalized communities in the healthcare system? Then that way we move away from this very, a word that is truly losing its value today, racism. Right. And we get to something that's actually fixable, something that we can take strides to changing.
So you mentioned something a second ago about the single parent household. Single parent households tend to be on a socioeconomic level below quite often the average household income level, because you only have one person earning and not two. But also the single parent household has limited, not just limited dollars, but limited attention to pay to children and teach them. And I would imagine that single mothers feel pretty much overwhelmed from day to day, just trying to get everything done in the day and wake up the next morning and start all over again. That focusing on nutrition and proper nutrition is really a secondary idea. It's like, just let me feed the kids so I can get to bed on time to get up tomorrow and do this all over again. Talk about the influence of a two-parent household, and is there any evidence that in these households, nutrition and exercise tend to be more important?
Yeah, well, yeah, definitely. And everything that you brought up plays into it. So, I think a lot of listeners, regardless of their skin color, would be able to resonate with this idea of when you're on your own and you're working whatever job you work, maybe you can support yourself. Maybe you struggle to do that. But now imagine having a child that also needs support with just your single parent income. Are you going to be able to live in a more affluent neighborhood that has better access to these things? Probably not. Are you going to be able to afford healthcare or, quality insurance, things of that nature, good food? Probably not, because you're going to be working on a much stricter budget. Are you going to have time to, watch your child, raise them, teach them, how to properly integrate into society as a functional adult? Probably not to the same extent as a two-parent household. And so do any of these things. So then when those individuals grow up, history might repeat itself, but fundamentally, do any of these things have to do with racism, or do they have to do with the fact that you got put in a really crappy position and you're trying to make the best of it? I'm willing to bet that it's going to be that you got put in a crappy position, you're trying to make the best of it. And you didn't get put in that position because of racism. You got put in that position because, that's just kind of how things unfolded for you. And the unfortunate truth is that, statistically speaking, being a person of color increases the likelihood that that is going to occur to you. So it's a correlate, right? So one could say, well, Black people are more affected by this. It's because of racism. And I would rather have it be, well, no, they're more affected by this because maybe, the children are raised in this environment. So when they grow up, they just repeat the patterns that they were raised with. And so ultimately what needs to happen is not blaming racism and blaming white people for these circumstances, but instead taking personal responsibility and trying to break this vicious cycle, by yourself. And I think we see that. We have countless success stories of people of color that are openly speaking out against this idea of systemic racism, saying, I was raised in the ghetto. I chose not to go down those routes because I knew what it would lead to. I chose otherwise. And now look at me, I'm successful, I'm well integrated, et cetera, et cetera. And, if they truly were disadvantaged, no matter what, because of their skin color, how could they accomplish that?
Right. And there are a lot of non-obese, very, very physically fit, very, very healthy Black people in this country. And I would argue some of the greatest bodybuilders in history are Black. They may have some genetic predispositions that favor them to be great athletes. Look at football players, look at basketball players. So this idea that skin color is exclusively the reason for obesity in the communities of color is disingenuous, and it fails upon immediate review, because you look at it and go, well, if this was true, then all Black people would have this problem, but they don't. And then people say, well, some Black people get good educations, they have better jobs. Oh, so wait a minute. So now what you're telling me is it's a socioeconomic thing, not a skin thing. And the reason that I'm picking on this is because if we're really going to fix this obesity epidemic in this country, which we really need to, like way before the planet gets hot and we can't live on it, we're all going to be fat and dying and sick. So if we want to address this, we have to be honest about it. And it has nothing to do with the color of your skin. Dean Paulson says something interesting. Unfortunately, lower income people make the worst decisions all around. Health, financial, personal, often all interconnected, not politically correct to say, I know.
Yeah. And two other things I just want to bring up quickly is I don't think that a lot of proponents of this idea of systemic racism realize how actually demoralizing and racist it is to suggest that systemic racism exists, because their entire premise is that due to the color of your skin, the world is against you and you will not be able to succeed unless we, reset and redo everything. And I mean, if I was a young person of color hearing that message that, the police are out to get me, the world is out to get me, corporations are out to get me, nothing I'm going to do is going to matter because everyone's out to get me because of my skin color, what's the point of even trying?
Right.
It's a very demoralizing message, and it's very racist because it meets the dictionary definition of racism by saying because of your skin color, you are automatically inferior. The idea of systemic racism existing is racist because it is based on the premise that being a person of color makes you inferior to being white, and that therefore you will not succeed in life. And I don't think that the proponents realize that their entire message is predicated on racist ideals.
Oh, I think they know it. I think that racism is being used as a wedge in our society to promote certain outcomes. I think that it's very, very sad what's being done here. It's using racism, and really the people that are suffering from systemic racism are suffering at the hands of the new racist. And what the new racist is someone who equates everything in life down to race. Anything that happens has a racial component, and this is why it happens. And this is nonsense. But believe me, there's a lot of money to be made if you get on this racism train and you become part of this message that everything is racist. It doesn't matter what you do in your life. Like you said, powers that be are going to keep you down, press you down. You know, I don't know about you, but Jay-Z doesn't look like he suffered racism. I mean, I can tell you, I mean, look, Little Wayne said, oh, come on. What do you mean? Do you ever see how many white kids listen to my music? He said. So the point is, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
Here's the thing, Carl, is that they did experience racism, I would bet. I think everyone, regardless of skin color, experiences racism, but it's going to be in the form of overt racism. Like people are racist in the world. There are plenty of white people that are truly racist against people of color. There are also plenty of people of color that are racist against white people. And whether your skin is colored or you're white, you are probably going to experience racism at one point or another. And the question isn't, did you experience racism? The question is, what did you do in the face of racism? Did you let it get to you? Did you give up? Or did you just say, okay, you obviously have a very skewed way of looking at things, and I'm just going to keep living my life and building myself up? It comes like you can't control other people. You can only control your own thoughts, beliefs, and actions. So stop focusing on what other people are doing. Focus on yourself and making life choices for yourself, because that's the only way that you're going to ever get yourself anywhere.
We're going to take a commercial break. When we come back, I want to talk about the reality of food deserts, because companies like Whole Foods and Trader Joe's are actually doing things to try to change it. And it's having great impact in cities like Chicago and Detroit. Before we do that, let's plug your website. If anybody wants to consult with Alex on their diet, how do they reach you?
They can just go to alexleaf.com and fill out my contact form.
Okay. All right, alexleaf.com. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more of Superhuman Radio. Being superhuman means being conscientious about the choices we make. White Oak Pastures is superhuman when it comes to raising livestock. They're committed to animal welfare, land regeneration, and rural revival. They responsibly manage the entire process from the pasture to your doorstep. High-quality, pasture-raised, great-tasting meat from a farm you can trust. Full nose-to-tail selections. They even have options for your pet. Go to shrnetwork.biz/White Oak and use code SHR20 to save 20% off your entire first order. Whether your goal is to build muscle or burn fat, you'll find everything you need at Redcon One. Need help getting a good night's sleep? Try Fade Out, or the most popular pre-workout supplement on the market today, Total War. Sign up for their new Transformation Challenge and win $10,000, or shop for apparel that people at the gym will know that you are serious about your training. Need a testosterone booster that works? Check out Boomstick. Whatever you need, you'll find the best quality supplements on the market at Redcon One. Go to redcon1.com. That's REDCON1.com, or go to superhumanradio.net and click the Redcon One banner ad today. Remember those rectangular toaster pastries you used to love when you were a kid? Well, Legendary Foods has just made them better. The new cake-style tasty pastry is like nothing you've ever had before. With 20 grams of high-quality protein and less than 1 gram of sugar, you'll feel like you're cheating, but you're not. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off off your purchase of tasty pastries. Now available in cookies and cream, red velvet cake, birthday cake, blueberry, strawberry, brown sugar cinnamon, and hot fudge sundae. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use code SHR10 today. Obesity. You've heard us talk about the power of copper peptides here on the show. Now try it yourself with Restoracell's amazing new skincare line built on the power of blue copper peptides. All natural, organic, made in the USA, and safe for sensitive skin. Save 30% on their Stem Cell Awakening Serum. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Restoracell. That's RESTORACELL. And use code SHR to save 30% off. Remodel your skin today.
New Mass Pro Synthogen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthogen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthogen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at synthogen.com. Mass Pro Synthogen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it.
Every day, there's a new wellness trend. Eat that, do this, avoid those. How do you know where to start or who to trust? Inside Tracker helps you cut through the noise by analyzing your blood, your DNA, your lifestyle, and your fitness tracker to provide you with a science-backed, trackable action plan on how to live, age, and perform better. Personalized, one-size-fits-one recommendations to help you optimize you. For a limited time, Inside Tracker is offering Superhuman Radio listeners 25% off the entire store. Go to shrnetwork.biz/inside tracker, INSIDETRACKER, to save 25% off. Change begins on the inside.
You're listening to the Superhuman channel. Don't hate us because we feel good.
Welcome back to Superhuman Radio. We're talking about obesity from the position of race. And is there really a link between the color of your skin and obesity? And is that link driven by systemic racism? Do black people get fatter because we mistreat them? In the study that I cited here, a good doctor states that the obesity epidemic has a variety of different components. It includes the ongoing stress that goes along with experiencing racism. I'm going to completely discount that because 2020 made us all stressed out with COVID. I don't think anybody got by in 2020 without excess stress. The suicide rates are through the roof from this whole epidemic. And so, as far as you're being treated racist and you go home and you eat too much, I don't buy that. I'm sorry. And you're not going to be able to make me buy it. But what I do agree with is from a socioeconomic standpoint, if you live in a really bad neighborhood, the probability of having a good grocery store close by is going to be limited. Whole Foods put a store in Detroit. I actually had Con Santuri Davison on. This is years ago, probably at least eight or 9 years ago. And something miraculous happened. When they opened up that Whole Foods, number one, white people from surrounding areas were driving over to this really less than desirable neighborhood to shop at Whole Foods, number one. Number two, Whole Foods slashed by up to 50% staple items, like eggs and milk and stuff like that, to become sensitive to people who had socioeconomic challenges that maybe they can't afford a container of Fairlife, or something like that, which was very sensitive of them, number two. But number three, Zillow tracked housing values around the area where the Whole Foods went in. And for 6 consecutive years, they went up higher and higher, as well as household incomes were impacted by that. Because let's be honest, if you're going to buy a house and there's a Whole Foods close by and your health is important to you, that's like having a good school in walking distance and you have young children. So let's talk about socioeconomics. And if we really want to fix this problem, in my humble opinion, it's simple. We need to get high quality food into the inner cities where people can take it home and cook it themselves instead of going to Popeyes for chicken.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. And the question is, Why has that not occurred? Because fundamentally, everyone agrees that one of the issues is food access and that these food deserts exist. So why haven't solutions been implemented? And, I'm sure there's a lot of answers to this. I personally don't know what the right answer is. One would think that government intervention would want to work in some way to do that, but all they can really do is hand out money and food stamps and provide financial means to obtain food. So the question is, why haven't private companies come in there?
Bam.
And I really doubt that the answer is because all of these private companies are racist.
No,
I would
course.
argue that the answer is because they are businesses that try to maximize earnings, and there just isn't profit to be made by going into those areas. And
it's a push and pull. So the poorest communities are the ones that have to be taught or retaught about nutrition, right? Number one. At the same time, Jeff Bezos could solve this problem in a minute, okay? Because Jeff Bezos could set up, he already has delivery service with Amazon. He already owns Whole Foods. They could, instead of, the problem with the bricks and mortar Whole Foods is building and employing 100 people in a store in a neighborhood where people aren't accustomed to shopping for those kinds of foods is a losing proposition. They're going to lose money maybe for years until the clientele builds up. But
it's also expensive. A lot of individuals in these communities wouldn't be able to shop at Whole Foods even if they wanted to.
Right. But what Jeff Bezos could do is he could create price sensitivity around certain zip codes, and he could just deliver the food to people from the local Whole Foods in his area and solve this problem and give people in food deserts access to healthy food. And he could tie that in with online courses where people can go and watch videos about how to make a certain dish. I really believe this is fixable. Craig Hollander makes a point. He says it's linked more to poverty, and people of color are more likely to be of lower incomes. That's true. And that's another issue, but we could absolutely start shipping good food into people in the poverty-stricken neighborhoods. We could.
Yeah, but why is it Jeff Bezos' responsibility to do that?
Why? I don't know. Because he's a billionaire, and everybody says, because the government's not going to do it.
I know, but that goes down another slippery slope that's tangent to this argument, which is, whose responsibility is it to put access to quality food in those areas? That's a completely separate discussion, but I think we've definitely arrived at the center point of what we're getting at, which is one of these main contributors to obesity is food deserts. And the food desert is not a result of systemic racism.
No,
it's a result of economics. And economics, unfortunately, is rather cold-hearted. It doesn't care what the color of your skin is. If these areas were filled completely with white people, it would not make a difference. The issue is money.
And we see that in Appalachia, in Kentucky. We have some of the poorest counties in America in this state that I live in Kentucky. They're not putting any Whole Foods or Trader Joe's out there in those little towns, because they'll lose their shirts. The store will be closed up in 2 years. They'll lose millions and millions of dollars. So poverty doesn't care what color your skin is. Poverty only cares what color your money is. That's it.
Yeah. And so, I don't know what the solution to this issue is. There's a lot of very smart people out there trying to think of solutions. And, I'm sure in time this whole issue will be fixed. But if we continue to blame it on racism, we're just going to prolong the amount of time it takes to fix it, because that's not the issue.
No, I agree. Let's see. We have some other comments here. Dean Paulson says, obesity also does not seem to bother African-American communities. It's more accepted. It's almost more accepted than being skinny. I don't know. I don't know about that. That could be.
Well, it gets back to culture. There are studies that take different, that basically have individuals rate silhouettes of different body shapes. And then they look at correlates to, what predicted which body shape was most attractive. And African-American individuals, Black people, tend to rate overweight bodies as being more attractive than underweight. And so there is a cultural skew there where there is not as much kind of internal stigmatization against being overweight or obese. It is indeed more accepted based on the literature, just as in Asian cultures, there is a strong, very strong stigmatization against overweight and obesity, to the fact that, most people stay in the normal weight range exclusively because of perceptions around being too fat, even if those perceptions might not be realistic from a health standpoint.
So this is an interesting statistic. 57% of non-Hispanic Black women, 46% of Hispanic women, 38% of non-Hispanic white women, and only 12% of non-Hispanic Asian women are obese, which proves your point that the culture either permits it or disapproves of it, and it has a trickle-down effect to everybody within the culture.
Yeah, but that's not the result of racism by any means.
No,
that's just cultural differences. In the same way that if you go to other, there was one fascinating study that took Zimbabwean indigenous individuals, and they all rated the sexiest silhouette, I'm going off memory here, or I should say the most attractive silhouette, as being around like maybe a BMI of 22, 23, or I'm sorry, I got it backwards, of around 26 to 27.
Right.
And then they looked at these same Zimbabweans who had been raised and lived in the United Kingdom, in the UK. So the same ethnicity, but because they were raised in a more Eurocentric area, they preferred BMIs that were 22 to 23. Even though, so same skin color, same ethnicity, but the culture they were raised in changed which body shape that they were more attracted to. And so there's no racism involved there. It's purely just a cultural difference.
Here's another great comment. Let's see, let me get this up here. He said, what if health insurance and food stamps subsidize real food choices in the grocery stores, incentivize at the root cause? As a historian, that's how food stamps started out. For those of you who are old enough to remember, there were two different colored food stamps. There was an orange one and a green one. The orange one was designed to go out to the country and buy stuff right from the farmer. And the green one was designed to use in your local grocery store in the city. And then they did away with that. In fact, food stamps it may still be, but it was originally a line item on the USDA's budget. Okay? Because it was designed to help farmers get some of the money that they had lost from the centralization of big cities. And it failed miserably because people preferred walking into a store or a grocery store or a restaurant in town and eating there. But yeah, we could revive that. What do you think about that? What do you think about the government subsidizing the purchase of healthy foods? But then does the government even know what's healthy?
Yeah, this opens up a lot of different cans of worms, and the government's already subsidizing things. So I think that just switching what they subsidize would be a viable way of addressing some of these issues. But I personally just don't have much faith in the government doing anything very efficiently. So I don't know. I definitely think that if the government is going to provide financial support for obtaining food, then they should do it the best that they can to make sure that the food that they're providing support for is healthy, and at the very least adheres to their own dietary guidelines. Because at the moment, as just one example, the dietary guidelines say make at least half your grains whole grains, right? And they do that out of convenience. Ideally, every grain would be whole grain. but they give you food stamps, and these people do not eat remotely close to half their grains as whole grains. They get all refined grains. So if they would put more kind of qualifiers on using things like food stamps, so that only certain foods that are deemed, healthy within given food groups could be purchased, I think that could possibly go a long way, because then the people who rely on that financial support really doesn't have a choice to get the unhealthy food.
But here's the problem. Here's the problem. We're going to take a break and come back and tackle this one. The government doesn't know what's healthy. Number one. Number two, there's an anti-meat movement, and it's nonsense. And I'm going to show you why it's nonsense, because I have an infographic of what Americans actually eat. And we eat far less red meat than the government would have us believe. And the government wants us to think that red meat is unhealthy. So I come back to this idea that, and you actually stated earlier, getting the government involved is not the answer, because the government doesn't do what's in the interest of the best people. It does what it needs to do with that in its own best interest and its relationship with industry. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about this. Stay tuned. Remember those rectangular toaster pastries you used to love when you were a kid? Well, Legendary Foods has just made them better. The new cake-style tasty pastry is like nothing you've ever had before. With 20 grams of high-quality protein and less than 1 gram of sugar, you'll feel like you're cheating, but you're not. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off your purchase of tasty pastries. Now available in cookies and cream, red velvet cake, birthday cake, blueberry, strawberry, brown sugar cinnamon, and hot fudge sundae. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use code SHR10 today.
New Mass Pro Synthogen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthogen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthogen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at synthogen.com. Mass Pro Synthogen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it.
If there is one mineral you should be worried about not getting enough of, it's magnesium. Magnesium is the body's master mineral, powering over 300 critical reactions, including detoxification, fat metabolism, energy, and even digestion is influenced by the presence of magnesium. That's why I'm so excited to tell you about a new magnesium product I've been taking now called Magnesium Breakthrough. It's the ultimate magnesium supplement, easily the best I've ever seen or experienced. With all 7 forms of magnesium, I was able to arrange an amazing deal for my audience, and I guarantee it's the best deal available on this product. Seriously, with volume discounts combined with our custom 10% coupon code SHR10, you can save up to 40% off select packages of Magnesium Breakthrough. And I promise that this deal is only available on this specific website, magbreakthrough.com/SHR. You won't find that deal on Amazon or even on the company's own website. Go to magbreakthrough.com/SHR and use code SHR10 to save up to 40% off select packages of Magnesium Breakthrough. Whether your goal is to build muscle or burn fat, you'll find everything you need at Redcon One. Need help getting a good night's sleep? Try Fade Out, or the most popular pre-workout supplement on the market today, Total War. Sign up for their new Transformation Challenge and win $10,000, or shop for apparel that people at the gym will know that you are serious about your training. Need a testosterone booster that works? Check out Boomstick. Whatever you need, you'll find the best quality supplements on the market at Redcon One. Go to redcon1.com. That's REDCON1.com, or go to superhumanradio.net and click the Redcon One banner ad today. Being superhuman means being conscientious about the choices we make. White Oak Pastures is superhuman when it comes to raising livestock. They're committed to animal welfare, land regeneration, and rural revival. They responsibly manage the entire process from the pasture to your doorstep. High quality, pasture raised, great tasting meat from a farm you can trust. Full nose to tail selections. They even have options for your pet. Go to shrnetwork.biz/white oak and use code SHR20 to save 20% off your entire first order. Obesity, Every day, there's a new wellness trend. Eat that, do this, avoid those. How do you know where to start or who to trust? Inside Tracker helps you cut through the noise by analyzing your blood, your DNA, your lifestyle, and your fitness tracker to provide you with a science-backed, trackable action plan on how to live, age, and perform better. Personalized, one-size-fits-one recommendations to help you optimize you. For a limited time, Inside Tracker is offering Superhuman Radio listeners 25% off the entire store. Go to shrnetwork.biz/inside tracker, INSIDETRACKER, to save 25% off. Change begins on the inside.
This is the Superhuman Channel, where brawn and brains finally meet.
Welcome back. So going into the break, we're talking about government intervention. The government has a war against red meat right now. This is an infographic, reliably sourced data. The red meat is at the very, very top, close to 12 o'clock. That is the amount of red meat the average American consumes in a year. Now, compare that to dairy, vegetables, and fruits. So this is nonsense. What the government says that we should be eating and we shouldn't be eating, I don't want the government making recommendations. I don't want the government in my pantry. And I, quite frankly, I don't think most people do. What do you think?
Yeah, I strongly believe that if the government is going to be subsidizing the food that people can purchase, that they should go by their guidelines. You know, we can debate whether or not the guidelines are, ideal, all we want, but the fact remains that most Americans are not following it, and that the guidelines are an improvement over what most people are eating. Regardless of whether someone wants to debate about how many servings of grain should be in their diet, the evidence clearly indicates that eating whole, minimally refined grains is superior to eating refined grains. And so if the government were to enforce simple changes from, for example, refined grains to whole grains, from, tomato sauce on pizza to actual fruits and vegetables, that I think it could go a ways in improving the health and obesity rates of impoverished individuals, regardless of their skin color.
How much has fat acceptance played a role in some of these skewed opinions about obesity and the acceptance of being obese? I mean, we have all these really, really obese people now, and it's like, don't shame me for being obese. It stops us from being able to talk honestly about the health ramifications of obesity. How much is this whole fat acceptance thing? Is it impacting us in this discussion?
I have no idea how big of an impact it's having. I definitely, and I think you would agree with me here, I don't think people should be shamed for their body weight. But I do agree with you that one of the side effects of the fat acceptance movement is kind of throwing to the wayside all of the established causes of detrimental health effects that obesity has. I've often, for years now, actually made the joke that they can keep the acronym HAES, but instead of health at every size, it should be changed to happiness at every size. Because fundamentally, I think that part of what they promote is that you should be happy no matter what your body size is, because shame does lead to a lot of adverse consequences. It facilitates disordered eating habits, such as binge eating disorder, which just further contributes to obesity. But you can't combine that by saying that, hey, being fat isn't a health risk, because it is. It's one of the most well-supported things in biological medicine that we know of. Carrying around excess fat mass is not healthy, period.
Let's see. We have a lot of comments here. This is a long one. It says, at least partly genetic. I am native. I've been doing bodybuilding for over a decade. I have a healthy diet, low body fat relatively, and my doc still checks me for diabetes regularly, and it's high. If I didn't have a good diet, I'd probably have diabetes by now. At the end of the day, there is a discrimination there. It's in assuming one is better than the other. I don't think so. I disagree with that. You had me, I understand the Pima Indian, and you're in Arizona now. the Pima Indian, they had a great study about 12, 15 years ago where they're considered genetically predisposed to diabetes until they start supplementing with magnesium. It's an interesting thing. There's a study that was done right in Maricopa County. Ever try to get someone who's not interested in fitness to work out? Good luck. Some like it and will willingly do it, and others won't. Again, there are some genetic predispositions, but they go away when you eat a diet that is more complementary to an ancestral diet. Let's say, things that grow out of the ground, fresh pieces of meat and fish. It really gets wonky when people depend on stuff that comes in packages and eating out at restaurants and stuff like that. You have any comments on Sonam Palbar's statement?
I think genetics are a tricky topic because genetics is, well, there's a lot of genes. So what specifically about the genetics? How is it interacting with our physiology? How can we overcome it? If it's, you're predisposed to diabetes because you tend to have higher levels of magnesium excretion, well, then supplementing magnesium overcomes the genetic issue. Just like if you have the genetic polymorphism for the MTHFR SNP, then, you can overcome that. If it's like the 677 homozygous mutation, you can overcome that by supplementing riboflavin because the entire mutation simply reduces the enzyme's binding affinity to riboflavin. So, what's the genetic and what does it do? And then how can we overcome it? Some other genetics might simply reduce a person's personal fat threshold. For example, there is a higher risk of diabetes in Black individuals. I assume that there's a genetic underlying there. And while I don't know the specifics of it, my assumption makes me think that they simply have a lower personal fat threshold. They have a lower capacity to store energy in their subcutaneous fat tissue, so that at lower relative body fat percentages, they're going to start storing fat in their intra-abdominal cavity, around their liver, around their pancreas, and in their skeletal muscle. And that's going to lead to the development of type 2 diabetes at a lower body fat percentage than it may for a different ethnicity. But getting back to the point of this whole conversation, none of that has to do with racism. That's just differences in genetics.
Right. I'm different in my genetics than my mother versus my father because I'm complementary genetic model of both of them. So, it's like we all have these genetic predispositions that we have to cope with and deal with and finesse and learn about as we go through life. And I don't think it's the reason for the season. And I definitely don't think it's racism. I want to come back full circle to end this show on a positive note. I do not believe that the obesity epidemic plaguing more Black people, slightly more Black people than white people. By the way, if you look at the overall numbers, men and women together, because those numbers I told you were women, Black people by and large have a 46% obesity rate, and white people have like a 42%. So we're not talking like, oh yeah, look, these poor Black people, there's so much. No, white people are fat too right now. Everybody's fat right now. Everybody's suffering from the same problems right now. And what I want to do, and I'm glad because I didn't prepare Alex for this discussion, but what I want to do today is to get people to stop naively believing, even people from Harvard who say that racism is the reason for obesity in the Black population, because it's not racism. It has nothing to do with this color of their skin. Culture, socioeconomics, single parent households. There's lots of reasons, food deserts, lots of reasons. But if we keep focusing on the lie, we're never going to fix anything because we're never going to focus on the real things that could have an impact.
Yeah, you can't change your skin color. It's an immutable characteristic of yourself. So why focus on things that you can't change? That's only going to stagnate progress. Focus on things you can change, which is how you move yourself through life, how you interact with other people, and the decisions that you make. Ultimately, everyone has control over themselves and only themselves, not anyone else.
This is hilarious, and we'll close on this. Aiden Ray said, glad nobody let Ronnie Coleman know he couldn't make it. I know, right? Glad no one told him he had bad genetics. Oh, yeah. Man. All right, look, that's it. Spread the word, share the show. Let's try to get the nonsense out of the discussion so we can focus on the real problems, because we have to solve this obesity epidemic. We do. It's a greater risk to our population than anything else right now. Alex, thanks for being here. Plug your website one more time.
Thanks for having me, Carl. Anyone can reach me at alexleaf.com.
And we're hoping everything's okay with Coach Rob and his wife, Jennifer, and we'll know more. I'll let you guys know more when I learn, and we'll see you tomorrow with more Superhuman Radio. Thank you for being here today.